Welcome to another episode and another design, and I'm going to challenge myself once again with what is essentially a flying wing. Although it does have those stabilizers at the wingtips, it's more of a flying wing than anything I've made before. And what is challenging about this type of aircraft? Well, by comparison, a standard configuration aircraft with its main wing, which of course produces lift, has a tail that is far enough away from that center of lift to allow for pretty easy pitch control. A crude analogy would be balancing a stick on your finger, where your finger is kind of like the center of lift. You know that a longer stick is going to be easier to balance than a shorter one. A shorter one is going to be kind of jumpy. So today's aircraft is like the short stick. There's just not a lot of distance between the center of lift and those aftmost control surfaces, which are also way out to the left and right, so they influence roll and to a certain extent yaw. So the whole thing is just kind of touchy. Prototypes here, one with a paper clip to test out different weight, and then one that was more complete, but I didn't like the nose. I made several prototypes after that before arriving at the final design. And a little bit about materials. I often have used 65-pound cardstock, which is about the most common weight you're going to find. But for this series of very small gliders, what I'm calling the micro gliders, I was using beige file folders, and those are about 80 pounds. And it's a nice weight. It's pretty sturdy. I don't have to double up as many layers as I might have to with the 65 pounds. So I start by rough cutting out the pieces and, being careful not to throw away little ones that I need. I do not use a wooden or plastic ruler when I'm using a mat knife or a razor blade like that, because it's going to start to dig into the side of the ruler and ruin it and also give you a wonky line. Be careful when you're cutting. You can start with light force. You can see the first cut I made didn't actually go all the way through. That's no problem. I'll just go back with the scissors a little later and follow that line pretty easily. Good to put a cap on your blade so you don't accidentally stab your finger as you're moving things around on your desk. Done that before. And then cutting out the curved shapes rather. You just have to be, very careful and deliberate. Do the best you can. Try not to leave a bunch of tags by ripping or tearing pieces off. Go ahead and make that last little final cut if you have the patience for it. Right, the curves again, you see I'm moving the cardstock more than I am moving the scissors. I don't know why that seems to work better for those real precise cuts, but it does. Those little relief cuts are going to allow the elevons and what I guess might be considered flaps, the two that are closest to the center line of the wing. Cutting out this brace here, just cleaning up something that I didn't quite like. Here you get an example of how challenging it can be. This particular model, I just had a very slightly rounded nose. So hey, if you can cut a radius that small, you're doing pretty good. And then I started making the creases, which is just a matter of pinching the material against the edge of a ruler and then applying some pressure to create an angle. Sometimes you pull up, sometimes you push down. It just depends on what's most comfortable and what sort of crease that particular piece needs. For the vertical stabilizers, I make the crease and then I straighten out the control surface, the rudder. And for the wing, you might find it helpful to use a window or some other light source so that you can really easily see the dotted lines. So I'm kind of calling those flaps, those two ones in the middle, that you can see those are deflected down about 10 degrees. The middle elevons are up about maybe 5 to 7, and the outer elevons at about 10 degrees of deflection to start with. Of course, you'll adjust those later. And then the assembly. I like to have a white canopy, so I traced the canopy shape from the file folder onto some white cardstock. I also need a 3 centimeter length of paper clip, which is going to be my nose ballast. That is going to allow the airplane to fly. Without that, it'll just sort of flop through the air like a leaf. Always apply glue in such a manner that there are, minimal clumps, and you want the entire surface to be covered. A glue stick is good for using on, areas with a lot of surface. and you don't want things to crinkle or warp, and liquid glue often will cause that to happen. Another brace piece on the top. Now I'm using the liquid glue for the bottom piece, which makes sort of the profile of a fuselage, and embedded in that piece is going to be the piece of paper clip. You can use a fairly healthy amount of liquid glue here, and just except on the back part, the aft part, you just want a very thin bead. And now making the canopy, applying just some dots of glue and kind of pushing with a chopstick to press the layers together. You can see the angle wasn't quite good, so I had to move it a little and then press the layers together again. And then attaching the vertical stabilizers. There are guidelines that you can follow so the positioning is accurate. You kind of hold them in place for maybe 10 seconds, and that's about enough for the glue just to hold them on. Make sure they don't get bumped out of alignment as you're working on other things. You might actually just wait several minutes for them to dry. All right, so I attached the canopy piece, the white piece, and then the back, the little triangle that goes over the nose, added those braces to the vertical stabilizers, and then you kind of just want, oh, one thing that I did forget, which was to give some angle there at the wing roots to give this aircraft a bit more inherent stability. And then it's really a question of just checking from all sides and making sure that the wing, the aircraft, I should say, or same thing, I guess, is as symmetrical as possible, left to right. Working out any twists, no matter how mild they may seem, they will drastically affect the flight. And then it's time to go see if I can make this thing fly well.